In the United States, when the subject of non-human animal rights comes up, very often People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, is what the average person immediately thinks of. The antics and stunts of this organization are infamous among people on all sides of the animal rights debate. As someone who is vegan for ethical reasons, but not a member of PETA, I have bumped up against the negative stigma that this organization has managed to generate since its beginnings in the early 1980s. Some people will assume that just because a person is a vegan, that this must mean that this person is a member of PETA and in agreement with all of its tactics and policies. Contrary to this popular assumption, there is a surprisingly large number of people within the vegan community who are not fans of the organization, and some who actively hate it and think its practices are fundamentally contrary to the animal rights message. I find myself falling somewhere between the committed PETA supporters and the outspoken critics, and hopefully this video will elaborate on why I feel that way. PETA has managed to popularize the word vegan more than any other organization that currently exists that promotes animal welfare, and they've connected it not only to the Eat Healthy movement that has swept the United States in recent decades, but also the movement for better treatment of animals used for food, clothing, vivisection, and so forth. The very word vegan was not on many people's radar until perhaps the late 90s or early 2000s, even though the word has been around since the first vegan society in the 1940s. A number of campaigns that have led to bans on things like gestation crates for pigs, battery cages for egg-laying hens, and fur farms in various places would likely not have generated as much attention as they did had PETA not been involved. However, for some animal rights activists, this focus on single issues is deeply problematic because while these campaigns do encourage welfare reforms, they do not deal with the fundamental issue that many vegans object to, which is the idea that other animals are ours to use and exploit as we see fit. Indeed, some vegans who seek to end the use of animals for food and clothing would argue that welfare reforms lead to bigger cages and more comfortable living conditions for animals, making people more comfortable with using and exploiting them. So then, when a member of a group like PETA raises an objection to, let's say, the slaughtering of a cow for hamburger meat, a person might respond that they are eating a humanely slaughtered animal, quote unquote. This would be problematic for somebody who views the animal rights issue as an abolitionist one, rather than a let's treat the animals better sort of thing. A comparative analogy that most of my channel viewers would be familiar with would be like when we secular humanists and anti-theists raise an objection to biblical apologists defending Exodus chapter 21 or Leviticus 25 and the enabling of slave beating. Apologists often respond that this is humane slavery rather than cruel slavery, but we see right through it because we recognize that it's not just the beating of the slaves that is problematic, but the fact that the biblical God makes allowances for and sometimes outright encourages the concept of one individual owning another as chattel. So too is it with many vegans when they see groups like PETA encouraging what are called welfare reforms. This has led to a group of vegans who specifically define themselves as abolitionists, which I mentioned before. They claim that veganism and the active effort to abstain from exploiting animals as much as possible has to be the foundation of anything that could rightly call itself an animal rights movement. Indeed, when the word veganism was first coined, this was pretty close to what the actual definition of the word was. PETA, though its motto is that animals are not ours to eat, wear, experiment on, use for entertainment, or abuse in any ways, does not always advocate directly for veganism and does not require that its members be vegan. Some people see this as hypocritical. Abolitionist veganism advocate Professor Gary Francione thinks this is an inherently problematic dynamic in that he believes it makes people think that they can engage in what he calls moral schizophrenia, in that it allows people to campaign against the bad treatment of cute doggies and puppy mills, and then go home and eat an equally sentient pig or cow while calling themselves an animal lover. He also criticizes PETA's work with fast food companies, claiming that PETA's so-called victories are actually things that the companies would do anyway to reduce cost. PETA's publicity stunts have also created all kinds of controversy for them in the past. Some of these PR stunts have included 1. A commercial in which a man dressed as a Ku Klux Klan member attends a dog breeders gathering and makes a comment about blood purity. 2. A campaign protesting against Nintendo and the video game character Mario's use of a skinned tanuki suit for a power-up. And 3. Super Bowl commercials in which scantily clad women do all kinds of sexually suggestive antics with various kinds of vegetables. Whether these stunts are in good taste or not is a legitimate debate, but I think a point can be made here. I have a question to ask my non-vegan subscribers who don't follow animal rights issues in the news. How many of you have heard of the group Mercy for Animals? How about Vegetarians International Voice for the Animals? How about In Defense of Animals? All three of these groups promote a plant-based diet and object to cruelty to animals. In other words, they protest many of the exact same things that PETA does, and they do demonstrations and everything, but in far less provocative ways. Yet I highly, highly doubt that most of you have heard of them. Yet the fact remains that you have heard of PETA, right? Is that not a point in their favor? That through their outlandish tactics, they make people aware of things. I don't know, I'm kind of 50-50 on this issue myself, with sometimes feeling as if PETA makes us look ridiculous and takes away from our legitimacy as a social movement, but other times I think they're effective. What do you all think? Finally, and perhaps most controversially, there is the charge that PETA is sexist. We have all seen the images of PETA demonstrations with extremely attractive thin women dressed in very revealing outfits, holding up signs encouraging people to go vegan, or women showering together to show how much water is used in meat production, or people holding up signs that say, "I'd rather go naked than wear fur," while not wearing any clothing. This use of the female body to promote a cause is seen by a number of vegans as not only a practice that trivializes our cause and lessens our legitimacy as a social movement, a social justice movement, but also betrays it by replacing one form of oppressive exploitation with another form of oppressive exploitation. Gary Francione, who I mentioned before, is one person who makes this charge, and Carol J. Adams, author of The Sexual Politics of Meat, is another. The basic idea is that women, or their body parts in these campaigns, are objectified as things or decorations in the same way that we look at dairy cows and see them only in terms of their reproductive anatomy, or their utility to us, and not their individuality. I personally must raise a counterpoint on this issue. In my almost 5 years of being a part of the vegan community, I've had the chance to talk to a few of these women who do these demonstrations. Almost all of them say that they are perfectly happy to do them and don't feel pressured or disrespected at all. One even made a video specifically about being an activist who uses nudity to get a message across. Also, it should be noted that plenty of men have appeared naked in PETA campaigns as well. Are we only supposed to care or be outraged when women do these things? Is that a double standard? Is that patriarchy? What is that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear some feedback on that and maybe get a discussion going. Anyway, I could talk for hours about PETA and the general animal rights movement, about the number of animals PETA euthanizes, about their possible involvement with the illegal activities of the Animal Liberation Front, or even their attempts to get captive orcas at SeaWorld legally recognized as persons. Whether we like them or not, PETA is part of the national discussion about animal rights, and so long as they continue to be the largest and loudest of the animal rights groups, we're going to have to continue talking about how they can best represent the position that other animals are not ours to use and do with as we see fit. So yeah, I'd again love to get a discussion going about this. I'd love to hear what everyone else's thoughts are about this. Answer the questions by questioning the answers later.